Most of your money is invested in your house, so you can't move. Suddenly, into the area comes someone who buys one of the houses and sets up what you and everyone else who lives there knows is an illegal drug operation, right in the middle of your neighborhood. Well, you think this should be easy to handle? All you have to do is call the sheriff's office. They'll arrest this guy and get him out of the neighborhood. Well, it's not quite that simple. They call it Bonnie Lock, one of those Scottish names that developers dream up, in this case for a neighborhood of ranch houses in southern Florida. It's not very Scottish, and there's no lock, but it's Bonnie enough. The houses run in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. The people here work for the government or are retired or own their own businesses. They're not rich, but they are homeowners. What everyone liked about the place is that the streets here didn't go anywhere except to Bonnie Lock, so there wasn't much traffic, and the kids could play outside safely. At least they could until this house changed hands. In January of 1983, the house was bought by Nelson Scott. There were several things different about Scotty as he came to be known. He was black, and there weren't too many black families living in the neighborhood. He was from the Bahamas, and that was unusual. And most important, he seemed to have a lot of friends, mostly white friends, driving expensive cars. Sometimes 40 or 50 of them would come by to visit him in the course of an evening. And people go in the house?
Yes.
Did it look like a party? I mean, they stay a long time?
No, they just stayed for a little while, and that's what made us so suspicious. Is a short term. You just don't run in and say, hello, how are you, and goodbye.
Jim and Pat Dickerson live right next door to the house that Scott bought.
Yeah, I thought, well, there has to be something going on. What's this man have that's drawing these people? And it had to be drugs.
Did you tell the sheriff's office?
Yes, many times.
What happened?
Nothing.
There was traffic constantly coming up and down the street, high-speed traffic, people parked all over the roads, blocking the driveways.
Earl and Fran McDonald lived diagonally across the street from Nelson Scott's house.
These maniacs would come flying up and down here all hours of the day and night, and it was a bad situation.
Chief topic of conversation around the neighborhood?
Yep, drugs.
Drugs.
Yeah, well, one Halloween we told the kids not to even come over here because we knew, what they would give out.
Bill and Carol Cannon and their kids moved down here from New York a few years ago. Bill Cannon is a retired New York City policeman.
The traffic was unbelievable. There were times when the cars were parked out into the street that neighbors had to either make a U-turn to go around to the other side of the block or drive over people's lawns.
Every time we did call the police, we were told it was a racial issue because we were white and he was black.
Do you think it was racial?
No, I don't.
Don Campbell and his family live next door to the Cannons.
I've lived in the neighborhood since around about October of '78. And since I've been here, I have not had any problems. When I initially bought the house, there was one individual who made some comments, but he put up a for sale sign and left.
The neighbors next door said that actually they keep an eye on your kids sometimes and you keep an eye on theirs, the way any neighborhood works.
I just got back off vacation, and when I go on vacation, he usually have a key to my house. When he goes, I have a key to his house. We watch each other's property.
During the time that everyone was complaining about the house across the street, when the sheriff's deputies came out, did any of them talk to you?
No.
Did you ever consider moving?
I did.
She did, I didn't. I bought this house and I started remodeling it. And I've done a lot of work here and there's a lot of me in it. And I intended to stay. He was going, not me.
I would have moved in a minute. I'd have been gone 2-3 years ago.
Our daily conversation...
Because to me, it wasn't worth it.
Our daily conversation when I came home for dinner was what Scott had done and what was going on next door. We ate and slept Scotty and his drugs for 2 and 2.5 years.
Attention all units. WSBN Crime Stoppers.
Using spot announcements on local television, the sheriff's office was urging the public to call in about crime.
If you have information about this or any crime, call Crime Stoppers. You'll be eligible for up to $1,000 reward and remain anonymous. In Dade, call 326-TIPS. In Broward, 765-TIPS.
One of the first times we called TIPS, the detective on the other end of the line said, well, you're a New York City police officer, you know narcotics, he's a neighbor of yours. Why don't you go in, make the narcotics buy, come back to us, tell us exactly where everything is, and then we will get the search warrant.
What was your reaction to that?
I told him I don't work for him anymore.
The calls came here to the 3rd District of the Broward County Sheriff's Office, just a few blocks from Bonnie Lock. What the neighbors were seeing was dozens of cars pulling up to the same house night after night. To them, it was obvious this was drug dealing. But when the patrol cars came, they never seemed to see anything. So the neighbors decided to gather the evidence themselves.
We decided to start taking tag numbers and pictures or anything we could get on him, you know.
You could take pictures right from your windows over there.
Right, the window right across here.
Among the pictures they took were shots of a sheriff's car. Did you offer this to the sheriff's department?
Oh, sure.
What happened?
Same thing. They took our evidence, and that's the last we heard about it.
We started with Crime Stoppers. We called building and zoning at different times when Scott would have so many trucks and such out on the street. We had called the 3rd District. We spoke with the task force, street crimes, narcotics unit, organized crime, internal affairs. No one wanted to listen to us. And, you know, we are constantly teaching our children to say no to drugs, but if our children come home and they see us as parents watching a drug dealer across the street, then they look at us and say, well, it's our responsibility to say no, and you don't have to do anything about the man across the street. I think that's why most of us were so... We wanted this man out for our children.
Ron Cacciatore is with the Organized Crime Division of the Broward County Sheriff's Department, the unit which handles illegal drugs.
We have to take cases in priority. Not that this case didn't have priority to them, because I certainly sympathize with those people up there and the frustration they had to go through with the red tape sometimes involved in police work or the passing of the buck. I think it happens all the time in all police agencies. It's just a matter of when you can get to it and when you have the time.
If you talk about probable cause, and you take a community of single-family homes, owners living in them, respectable people, taxpayers, and so on, with many of them in a whole square block complaining and complaining and complaining, I can't think of a jurisdiction in the United States where that wouldn't get you a search warrant.
Okay, but like it or not, I think we live in times now that police officers or law enforcement officers have to go by the letter of the law, not hunches, not intuition, and not hearsay. We have to take the information these neighbors give us and we have to corroborate it. And just because the neighbors saw a lot of cars, and which is one of the things to look for in somebody who's dealing in the neighborhood, it is not enough to establish probable cause to get into that house. It's much more than that.
Finally, in November of 1986, after 2 years of complaints, an undercover cop, Billy O'Hara, from the Organized Crime Unit, set up an operation in the Cannon's house to watch Nelson Scott.
I observed the Nelson residence had a lot of activity there, cars coming in and out of the area.
You, in effect, were observing the kinds of things that the neighbors had been writing down and keeping track of.
Yes, I was.
You were gathering evidence
yes.
for a probable cause for a search warrant.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you before you were ready to ask for a search warrant?
Well, it was within a couple of days, and we took it from there.
Broward Sheriff's Office, open the door. Broward Sheriff's Office, open the door.
When the deputies finally busted Nelson Scott, even the complaining neighbors admit they did it with style. The smashing of the Bonnie Lock connection was scheduled live on one of those television shows Geraldo Rivera does. It was December 2nd, 1986. After 2 years, the drug house that nobody would even investigate was ready for prime time. It was the highlight of the show. This is what you found in the house.
Yes, we got approximately 2 kilograms of cocaine in the bags here. Little bags that they gram out and sell it by grams. The spoons, a firearm that was found in the bag, a .22 automatic with a silencer adapted to it. And this also was found in the residence of the .57 Magnum.
Also found in the raid was this notebook containing the names of 4 deputies from the local district. Least surprised by the names were the neighbors, who had observed that one of the deputies was a frequent visitor.
It appeared he would come over here, he'd spend a half hour, an hour, he would go in with pizzas. He'd come by and call him on the bullhorn. It got to the point that he'd be parked outside his house for an hour, double parked, and leave the car there. And it got to the point that we lost all faith in him. You see a police officer there, and you're still telling this police officer and everyone that comes to the house that this guy is dealing drugs, and they're going to his house. How can you trust him?
Deputy Roosevelt Davis denies any wrongdoing. He says he's being made a scapegoat for the sheriff's investigation. And what happened to the deputies whose names were in the book found in the raid? We asked the sheriff of Broward County, Nick Navarro.
At the present time, 2 individuals have already been fired from the agency. One directly because of his contacts with these people. There was a 3rd complaint that we found to be unfounded, and we deal with these situations as they come up. However, because we have to deal sometimes with unions and we have to deal with other job protection that you have to give the individuals, it comes to the point that it is difficult to really take care of these situations.
If I did what they did in New York, I'd be pounding the pavement looking for a new job. And if I was involved in any way, I'd be in jail now.
Nelson Scott has been out on bail since his arrest in December 1986. He pleaded not guilty and will go on trial later this month. But many of the neighbors in Bonnie Lock, whatever happens to Nelson Scott, will never feel the same way about the sheriff's office.
Has this whole thing changed your attitude toward the police?
Oh, definitely.
This district, sure. They tell you to believe in your cops and, you know, get involved. Well, you get involved, and what do? Nothing.
I don't think the raid would have ever happened if it hadn't have been for that show on television.
You think that he might still be living next door? And,
right, I definitely do.
They needed a sure thing for that show.
And it was
a sure thing.
Are you going to stay here?
No.
No way. If a guy came into my house with a gun to rob me, and I think some of those deputies came in, I wouldn't know who to go after first.
Everyone asks, Corinthian leather? Of course, why not the best? It's the same with our
tested positive or even has the disease itself. That is fact.